Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Nichols and I teach Procreate. I have dozens of classes, a private community, live calls all the time in my membership, and all of that is linked below. I also have some really amazing freebies for newsletter subscribers, so make sure you go grab those as well. I love drawing mushrooms, and I've been having so much fun doing gnomes and mushrooms lately as we head into fall here in 2025, in case you're watching this later. It occurred to me that a mushroom would be the perfect beginner lesson, and we don't even need to look at reference photos. So I am going to make this a truly beginner lesson. We're not going to worry about clipping masks and alpha lock and things like that. It is really just to get in and understand, just kind of how to get started. So this is intended for the uber beginner. All right. So when you open Procreate, you're going to have a gallery and it'll keep all the things that you've been working on. But we're going to go to this plus sign right here. I'm also going to use native brushes today. So go to the plus sign, and this is a list of things that you will create over time. So you can just tap on one of them if you already have one that you like the size of and all the settings. But for a brand new one, I like to tap this plus sign right here again. And I go to inches. And then for width, I am going to do, let's just do a square. I'm going to do a 12 inches by 12 inches. So you just tap on the height and the width, and then tap on the DPI. If it doesn't say 300, go ahead and change it to 300. If you have, depending on your iPad, you might not have very many layers, so you can change it to like a 10 by 10 inch. Maybe try to have at least 10 layers for this. I haven't really thought about that part, but you don't need too many for this beginner lesson. For color profile over here, I always check this first sRGB down below display P3. And then let's just tap create. And I can't remember if I mentioned the 300 DPI is considered high resolution. This is a raster program, so you can't take something that's 10 inches and print it at 40 inches. So, you tend to think about what you might want to use your art for before you create your canvas size. So if you think you might want to print at like 11 by 14 and you can get enough layers with that size, then you would create an 11 by 14 inch canvas. For just practice, it really doesn't matter. So now that you're here, I just want to show you a couple of quick things that are super basic that we're going to learn about today. And that is, we have our brush, and if you tap on it, you get to all of your brushes and your different brush sets. I'm going to go ahead and go down to inking. We'll use native brushes, but definitely go grab my potpourri freebie and my multimedia or mixed media freebie for my newsletter subscribers. And I like to do dry ink. So that is right here. So inking and dry ink. We'll just kind of maybe stick with that today. And then this is your smudge tool, and you get to select any of the brushes in your smudge tool, and this is your eraser tool. And you get to select any of the brushes for those as well, because they're gonna give a certain texture, right? So the smudge tool is gonna smudge with a certain texture. The eraser tool is gonna erase with a certain texture. So you're gonna want to have control over that. And then this is your layers. So you have a background, which you can change the color if you tap on it. Let's go ahead and do that. So tap on the little white background, and let's pick a nice fall color. Maybe let's go over to teals and kind of a dusty teal. Maybe a little more blue. I like darker backgrounds personally. And then if you go back into layers, you can add layers by tapping the plus sign. So I like to start with a few layers. You can change the names of your layers by tapping on it and tapping rename. And we're not going to go into a bunch of information about what you can do here. And the other thing you can do is this little N. So the check mark is just turning layers on and off. The little N goes to opacity, where you can change the opacity, and blend modes, where you can come through and change blend modes. So as you take classes, and I have a kind of a playlist for beginners that you can kind of work your way through, you'll learn slowly what all of these things do. There's some things that I never use, so you don't really need to use every single tool. If you're confused about layers, just think of them like pieces of glass that you're stacking. So if you've painted a blob on this top layer and you've painted a blob on a layer below it and they're stacked, well, if the blob on this layer is over here and the blob on this layer is over here, then you can see both of them because it's kind of glass. If the layer on top is covering the blob below it, then you're gonna be blocking most of it and you can't see it, right? So just think of them as the things that are farther away in a scene, for example, might be lower layers because the things that are closer are sort of overlapping and covering them up. All right, and then this is your palette. So you can get to, I like to view it from the disc. This is a palette I have selected, which you can choose from this. If you tap on palette right here, you can import palettes. You can create your own palettes with the plus sign. And you can go ahead and view exactly how you want to view. If you go to this harmony, you can also tap this and get to some things like that to help you pick some colors that go well together. But with this disc view, you can go around to different hues and different shades of that hue, and I love it. You can get back to the gallery by tapping gallery right here. You can change the name of your work. I'm going to go back into it. Over here is your brush size and opacity. And down here, I'm going to have this all the way up. This is a button that you can set to different things, and that's not something you need to learn today. And this is an undo and redo button, but the gestures that are most important are 2-finger tap to undo and 3-finger tap to redo. So you can either do it here or you can just do it with gestures. So let's go ahead and make a mushroom sketch. Now that you kind of have a general idea, we don't really need to go into all these things, and if we do, we'll talk about it as we go. So I have a nice dark background, and so I'm going to choose a light color for my sketch. I'm on the dry ink. I could go to a pencil brush if I wanted, but I'm just going to go to a small size of my dry ink brush. We'll just do a single mushroom because we're going to keep this really, really simple. So let's make sure it's a mushroom that it's at an angle where we can see some gills underneath. So let's go ahead and make a kind of a blobby, squashed oval. I would even squash it more at the edges like that. We're going to do a real organic, I guess, mushroom. Now here's a trick you could that comes in handy. I'm going to tap and hold. If you look at what I'm on eraser, I'm on a different brush set. But if I want that same brush that I'm using, the dry ink, as my eraser brush, I can tap and hold. And you see erase with current brush is what it said. So now you can check and see, yep, you're on the dry ink. So now I can just tidy up my sketch a little bit like that. I'm going to go back to brush. All right, so that's like the underside of the mushroom. How big do you want your cap to be? And I'm kind of thinking this mushroom is going to go kind of a curve like this. So my top of my cap will be up in this area, and then I'm going to come down over to that edge. I'm going to come down over to that edge. Okay? Now where that top is, we're going to, wherever that curve, I was saying I wanted a curve like that. Imagine that line coming out down here. This is going to be your trunk. And the only reason why that's really something to kind of imagine is that it'll look weird. I'm going to 2-finger tap to undo those lines. It'll look weird if your trunk, the stem of the mushroom ends up kind of coming out over here. So if you just kind of vision, oh, where's the top of it? All right, so I'm going to come out down here. So now I know approximately where that stem is going to come. And now some mushrooms, that stem is way up in there and you just need to draw some gills up there. I'm going to pretend like we're seeing one where we can kind of see the base of it. So I'm kind of picturing a little oval in here that is the base of that stem. And then I'm going to come down and make a big fat stem. 2-finger tap. Maybe just a regular stem. Yeah. All right, and then I can just tap on erase since I already know I switched that eraser to dry ink. It's going to stay that way until I change it. And now I'm just going to clean up. I'm not going to have this line down the center. I'm not going to be able to see that section right there because now my stem is in the way. And I'm not going to be able to see the back part of that little oval we drew. So I'm going to clean up my sketch a little bit. Maybe clean up here a little bit. All right, I'm gonna go back to brush. And if you want to have that sort of little skirt around the edges, you can kind of draw a little curve down on both sides and a little waviness like that. And then erase inside of that as well. So for the gills, I'm gonna go back to the brush. I'm going to attach the gills like the spokes of a bike or something like that. So they're going to kind of radiate out. So one is going to come, some of them are going to come straight up to the edge of this. Some of them are going to come back like that from the back of this oval. Some of them are going to come over this way. I'm going to 2-finger tap to undo. I'm going to make them all a little curvy. So the one that's going over that way, I'm going to go like this. Over this way, the same thing. Now I'm going to put one here going up towards the edges over there. I'm going to put one back there going to the back edge. Whoops. I switched colors. There, and just add a few more. Once you get a few in, it's kind of easy to get the rest in. And then do you want any circles and bumps that are protruding off the edge there? We'll make a fun stylized mushroom. All right, since I have a dark background and a light sketch, I'm gonna leave the blend mode the same. And I'm going to tap on this and tap the N and turn the opacity down so I can see through that sketch. If I had a light background and a dark sketch, I would change the blend mode to multiply, which is all the way at the top, but you can't do that with a white sketch. And what multiply does is just kind of lets you see through the sketch to the layers underneath it. Now I like to lock my layer so I don't accidentally start illustrating on it. So you can tap it and tap Alpha Lock and you'll see the little grid there. And all Alpha Lock does is makes it so you can only draw on the pixels that are already on that layer. So it won't let you start illustrating. So it's just a nice way to avoid that mistake because we're going to turn the sketch layer off later. We don't have that as part of our final illustration. If your sketch isn't at the top, you can move it to the top. So any layers can be moved in by tapping and holding and moved around. So you can tap and hold and it kind of highlights. Tap and hold. You can see it kind of bump out. So move your sketch to the top and we're going to work on a few layers down here. I'm going to add a few more layers down here. So remember we talked about things that are underneath, things that are on top, and how to know what layer to use. If I'm looking at this, I would say these dots are on a pretty high layer. There's nothing covering them up. This mushroom cap is also on a pretty high layer, just under the dots. And this part underneath where the gills are can be on a layer that's underneath that cap layer, because then any messy edge that you draw with those gills, it will hide underneath the cap. So that's kind of nice. This skirt is on top of the gills. You can see that here. It's on top. The gills go behind it, go under it. And then this stem is under the skirt. So you can kind of start wherever you want. I like to start kind of in the middle. I never start at the bottom. So you can always rearrange your layers later if you need to. All right, I'm going to start with my cap. So I'm just in the middle here. And I'm going to do a vibrant orange. And I'm just testing. I'm going to go to a bigger brush size. And I'm going to test that color on my background. I think that works. And I don't like to fill color. You can drag and drop and fill color. This is just going to fill the whole page. You can fill color and it just fills it solid. But I like texture, and this brush has some texture. So I like to draw in by hand. And you can do this with any brush you want. You can pause and take as much time as you need, filling in your whole cap. And I would just do one color for now. I will go ahead and fast forward. And 2 fingers helps you rotate and pinch out. And I should have mentioned that earlier. All right, and I like to toggle on and off my sketch because sometimes it can trick your eye. Like I didn't realize I had a little spot there. And I'm going to go to my eraser, which is also on dry ink, and I'm going to reduce the size a little bit and clean up my sketch over here. And this is why it's nice to be able to choose whatever brush you want for the eraser, because I like that texture and I wouldn't want to have the eraser just be like a super crisp line. So you get to choose whatever texture you want to erase. All right, now let's go to a layer above it and put our spots. I'm gonna go, you can double tap in white. So I tapped the palette here, double tap in white. It usually goes to white, sometimes it doesn't. I'm gonna drag it down a little bit gray and go to a smaller size, make sure I'm on brush. And just kind of, I'm not gonna spend much time on this part. I like kind of rougher looks. So you can pause it and do as much detail as you want. That one looks like it's floating. I might make that a little bit more of a blob. And because it's on a new layer, if that bugs me later, it's already bugging me. You can just come in and erase, and because it's on a different layer, it's not affecting the layer around it, under it. All right, I think that's good for my dots. And now I'm gonna do the gills, so I'm going under my cap. And here's the reason for that. So if I go to that orange that I had, and I'm gonna go to a darker, so I'm gonna go a little redder and a little darker. We'll see if I like that. If I go down here and I end up going across this line, it's hidden behind the orange because it's on a layer under the orange. Now I have a lot of texture in that orange, so you will be able to see it here and there, but I don't have to be so precise along that edge, which is kind of nice. Although one of the things that really helps you get a less digital look is using fewer layers. So you kind of pretend like you're using paper. You have to get everything done on one layer. Right now I am going around this skirt, but I just realized I don't really need to, because I am going to show you how, because we choose a layer on top of this, I can just cover up the gill area anyways. So I can just go ahead and fill this whole gill area. And there's no gills showing, so I need to go to a layer above that to draw my gills. So I'm going to add a layer. So I'm on this sort of base for my gills. I'm going to add a layer. Now I have a layer above my gills, and I can go to whatever color I want. I think I'll go to kind of a dusty pink and a smaller size and draw some gills. Whoop, those are kind of big. I need to go even smaller size. Now these can go right off the edge over here. And I'm not going to talk about clipping masks, but this is one use that a clipping mask would come in handy, which would just contain your gills on that red layer. I think that's enough for my very basic gills. And now I need the skirt. The skirt needs to be on a layer above the red and above the gills. So if I'm looking here, I already have some layers that are. So I could, because my skirt is not touching that orange cap, I can just do it on that orange cap layer. And if that's kind of making you nervous, because you have, you know, maybe your stem goes all the way up into and you don't have a separation there, then all you need to do is add a fresh layer there. I'm going to 2-finger tap to undo that. I'm going on the layer with the orange. Now for my stem, I'm going to pick an orangey, pale, orange sherbet color. Maybe not quite like that. Maybe a little more beige, more yellow. All right, and a bigger size. And you can see it's covering up the red gill just fine. So now I can just create this shape however I want that shape to look. Might need a smaller size for that too. Sometimes your palm makes it do the undo, 2-finger tap undo. So, or your hand, not your palm. So you kind of have to watch for that. All right, and now I want to finish that stem, but I need to go underneath this layer. So I am going to go, gosh, I have 2 options here. I'm going to go down, just go down 1 layer. I just need to be under this layer, but I could go to this one or this one. And I'm going to go a little bit more towards orange and a little darker and test that. That's fine. I'm not really worrying about colors too much. And see how I can just be messy up here and it's hiding behind that. That's why I wanted to do a layer below. And I'm veering away from my sketch down here. And I think it's safe to turn the sketch off now, so we can tap on the layers and just turn that, toggle it off right there. All right. So hopefully that helps you kind of understand the layers a little bit and when to go higher or lower and things like that. Now, if you want to add more details, this is where it's handy to have a lot of layers. So even though I mentioned that it's a less digital if you use fewer layers, there are some benefits to using a lot of layers. For example, let's start with this super basic example. I can put some shading in here that's under this. And I could do it right on this layer, but what if I don't like it and I want to turn it off, right? I might want to just have some flexibility and not mess up that layer. Now, this layer did not take me very long, and so I would probably go ahead and do it on the same layer, knowing that if I change my mind later, I can just change it back to this pretty quickly. So it's all just part of the workflow that you get into and whatever makes you the most comfortable. If you have a new layer, you can also play with the blend mode of it though, so that's also kind of nice. So I'm on the layer that has that stem, and I'm going to go ahead and add a layer. Tap the plus sign, and now I'm on a layer above it. So I'm going to select that color by tapping and holding. This is a gesture that you can set if it's not already set to show the eyedropper by tapping and holding. And let me just show you where that is really quick. If you go to the wrench icon, go to Prefs, and go down to Gesture Controls, and go to Eyedropper. Touch and hold, and then you can delay that as much as you want so that you have to touch and hold for a long time. In fact, that's probably how mine switched from white to the background color without me realizing it. It probably did a quick touch and hold and selected the background color. So I'll bump my delay up a little bit and tap done. So now I have to hold a little longer before the eyedropper pops up. So I like to select that color and then go in and make a shadow version of that color. So I'm going to go a little bit more towards blue and a little bit more towards black and test that. Maybe I just want to add a little on the side, kind of tipping my pencil to the side a little bit. And I am going to go ahead and show you clipping masks because this is a really good time to use clipping masks. If I really want to contain this shadow on the stem itself, you can see here I didn't. I can turn that layer into a clipping mask, and then it'll only be able to be seen wherever there's pixels on the layer that it's clipped to, which is these pink lines and this stem. You can see that right here. So I'm going to tap on it and tap clipping mask and watch right here. So you can't see it. Even though it's there, it's all contained onto the stem. All right, so I'm going to undo that because I said at the beginning that we're not going to talk about all of that stuff. Only because there's so many things to learn, so many things. And it can be really overwhelming. All right, so I'm just gonna put some fun stripes on there as well. I got some shadowing. I'm just kind of playing around. I'm gonna come up to this layer, so that's this one right here, and add a layer above that. And maybe I will use this color to add some fun designs on there. I can go to this red layer that's down here, way down here, and add a layer above that, and select the color, go to maybe a purpley version of that, darker version of that, and have some fun down in here, darkening. I'm trying not to spend time on actual illustration with this. This is just kind of a fun, stylized mushroom look. So this is to show you that that would be a good layer if you were going to put some shading in. You could do it on that layer right there. And let's think about the cap and the dots. So we went to a layer above this skirt layer to add these little doohickeys, and that's this layer right here, and that's also the layer above the orange layer. So I could stay on that layer that's above the orange layer, and I could select that color, maybe go a little bit more yellow, a little brighter, and I can do all sorts of things. Maybe you want some really fun doodles. Maybe you want to add an interesting edge. I'm kind of pushing harder and lighter around the edge here. You could even take that edge all the way down here. Because you're on a layer that's above that red layer, you can see it. What you can't do is doodle on top of these dots because we're still on a layer under those dots. But you can take advantage of that. Maybe you want to have some shading under those dots. You can see how it goes right under. So maybe I want to select that orange, go to a darker version, and have a little shading down underneath. And if you want your dots to have some texture, now they're just dots, so I am going to go to the dot layer itself, grab that color I chose and go maybe double tap in the white. This is where I could add some actual white, since I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that on camera, since we chose a little bit of a light gray. I could go a little darker to add some darker areas, maybe even darker and smaller. Add some darker areas around those, and so on. Now let's say I want to change the background color. I don't like this background color anymore. So I'm going to go to my layers, tap on the background color, and play around with what you think would be a better option. You have all the flexibility. You could also go to a layer that's under everything. This bottom layer doesn't have anything on it. And you can go experiment with different brushes. If you go into painting, this jagged brush is really fun, the Salamanca brush, the Nico rule, and go to a big size. Maybe double check your color that you chose back here, and then go to a lighter version. Have fun. Because I'm on a layer that is under everything, I can blob all over. Maybe I want to go a little oranger and brighter up in the corners. Then I can tap and select, or tap and hold to select that same brush as my smudger. And now I can come in and smudge all that. I personally like to add canvas texture over the top of everything as well. And that gives everything a nice texture. So there's so much that you can do. If you want to add some grass down here, I would probably go to a layer that's on top of everything, right? And pick a nice mossy color that looks good with everything. I'm going to go back to inking, dry ink, and here's where you can. This is why going on top is a good idea. So you can go right over the top of your mushroom. All right, so I hope that helped explain for the super duper beginner a few things that you might be kind of questioning, like canvas size, color profile, DPI, how to manage your layers, why you have all these options with brushes. It's nice. Don't forget you can rearrange your layers, and you can also tap on one and tap select with the arrow and move things around. I would make sure one of the key things to remember is don't move things too much. Every time you take something and move it, especially if you rotate it or change the size, and then you deselect it, it's going to get a little bit more pixelated each time. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I hope you have fun learning Procreate. If you are still interested in having some more lessons, I have a free class that's completely free that shows you a really fun kind of greeting card, thank you card, and uses symmetry and is a little bit more complicated, but it is also geared towards beginners. And I also have a whole YouTube playlist And then also my dozens of classes that I have in my membership definitely have plenty for beginners. My membership is for all skill levels, and we focus on having fun. We don't focus on earning money with art and things like that. So the focus is just on everybody's art journey wherever they are at. And I have classes on a wide variety of topics. So there's things that will interest everybody. And it's a really amazing community. I hope you join us. Bye.